I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me. We begin in Iran with its Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif coming out to say that Iran will continue to find buyers for its oil and use a vital shipping lane to transport it. This after Washington announced all waivers on imports of sanctions hit Iranian oil would end next week. The move pressuring importers to stop buying from Tehran, further tightening global supply.
We believe that Iran will continue to sell its oil. We will continue to find buyers for our oil. And we will continue to use the Strait of Hormuz as a safe transit passage for the sale of our oil. That is our intention, and that is what we believe will happen. But if the United States takes the crazy measure of trying to prevent us from doing that, then it should be prepared for the consequences.
There's renewed tension on the US-Mexico border, with US President Donald Trump threatening to send armed soldiers there. Trump tweeting a little earlier today that Mexico soldiers recently pulled guns on our National Guard soldiers, probably as a diversionary tactic for drug smugglers on the border, although he isn't providing any evidence to support the claim of drug smuggling. Now, Trump hitting the keyboard further, saying, better not happen again. We're now sending armed soldiers to the border. Mexico is not doing nearly enough in apprehending and returning. Now, this all comes after US soldiers in Texas were confronted with armed Mexican soldiers who thought the US troops had crossed into Mexico, with Mexico's president promising to investigate the incident. Moving now to Sri Lanka, where it's just been revealed that one of the attackers in the string of bombings on Easter Sunday studied in the UK and Australia. The death toll now stands at least 359 people, with more than 500 others injured. Burials have been continuing today, with mass graves dug for victims, with 60 people already arrested in relation to the bombings. Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena has reportedly asked the country's police chief and defence secretary to quit following the attacks. Hundreds of people are still being treated in hospital, while authorities are calling on people to be vigilant, with fears there may be further attacks. The Foreign Ministry coming out to say that the blasts could have been avoided altogether.
Well, there was definitely a lapse of intelligence, and the government has, we have to take responsibility, because unfortunately, if the sharing of, intelligence information had been given to the right people, I think at least this could have been, whether it could be avoided or even minimized.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has arrived in Russia ahead of his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday. Kim travelling to his first summit with the president on his private train. The Kremlin says they'll talk about the Korean Peninsula's nuclear problem, while analysts say Chairman Kim is seeking support after talks with President Donald Trump failed, with those summits in Singapore and then Hanoi ending without any agreement. And let's go now to Ivan Nechepurenko, who's a New York Times correspondent based in Moscow. Ivan, thank you so much for joining me. So we know that Kim is really chasing sanctions relief here, which he didn't get from Washington. So tell me, how likely is it that he'll get this from Russia?
Well, perhaps both Kim and Putin would like to show the outside world that the summit can produce something very tangible. But the truth is that the trade between the two countries is very small scale, and it's very hard to imagine that Russia, with its quite weak economy and Russia being under sanctions itself, can provide much of any sanctions relief to North Korea. So it's more for showmanship. It's more to show that they have alternative options, which in fact they actually don't.
And tell me, how does this benefit Vladimir Putin in terms of the way he wants to sort of put himself out there in terms of international affairs?
Well, it does to the extent that people discuss it a lot. You discuss it a lot in Israel, for instance. This is a good indication that you think that this is a very important meeting. But again, the truth is that there won't be much tangible results behind it. And of course, we won't know much, but we'll see a lot of them shaking hands tomorrow and smiling to each other. And of course, Kim arriving on a train grandly to the Russian port city of Vladivostok. It's all images that stick to people's minds. But the truth is that behind that, there's very little.
And of course, Ivan, it is a very symbolic meeting that we're expecting. But tell me, how much does this serve as a reminder to Washington that the North Korean leader has other options in the region backing his leadership?
Well, of course, it's a back and forth diplomacy. Kim is moving and is using all cards he has with Washington, with Russia, with China, with South Korea. So it's this brinkmanship that is never ending. Now he's playing the Russia part, but it's not going to be the end of it. The end result is that North Korea wants to get some kind of a deal with Western states, with the states that can provide it economic relief. And this is not something that Russia can provide North Korea with.
And Ivan, finally, tell me, what's the real history of relations between Russia and North Korea?
Well, of course, it's a very long history since the war on the Korean Peninsula, and North Korea took a lot from the Soviet Union and from Russia in terms of the way it governs itself, of course, with its own national traits. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, of course, Russia's influence has been waning, but now it's coming back a bit as Russia wants to assert itself as a more of an independent player on all continents, in all international conflicts. So Russia is more visible now.
OK, Ivan Nechiporenko, really appreciate your time. Thank you. Egypt could have Abdel Fattah el-Sisi as its president for another 11 years after Egyptians approved major constitutional changes, giving the president and the military greater powers. However, the snap referendum was criticised by human rights groups. Our senior Middle East correspondent Mohammed Al-Qasim looks at what this means to Egyptians domestically.
It's a new dawn for the people of Egypt, who could see Abdel Fattah al-Sisi as their president until the year 2030.
The number of the ones who said yes for the Constitution amendments, 23,416,741 votes.
With a turnout of just over 44%, an overwhelming majority of Egyptian voters backed constitutional amendments extending President Sisi's rule and handing him greater power to influence the judicial system. The changes also give the military larger role in the Egyptian politics. Sisi took to Twitter shortly after the results were announced to thank his fellow citizens, the great Egyptian people who dazzled the world with their awareness of the challenges facing Egypt. The president's supporters say his rule will ensure stability and security for the country in an otherwise unstable region.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is the best until now. It's enough that we're safe, unlike some of the surrounding countries that are suffering from unrest.
But not everyone agrees. Rights groups accuse the government of rushing the vote, and those who dared to speak up said term limitations are necessary.
I refuse the president to stay in power for more than 2 terms. This is the problem of the Arab people. Everyone wants to remain in power. The West is advanced because the president sits in power for a period or 2 and then leaves the power to another one.
Great president.
Sisi enjoys the support of U.S. President Donald Trump and the backing of key Arab states. The former defense minister came to power in a military overthrow of an elected but divisive Islamist president in 2013. He has been accused of cracking down on opposition and limiting freedom of expression. And now, with this victory, critics fear Sisi may use his new authority to strengthen his grip on power. Mohammed Al-Qasim for I-24 News.
Now, how much time does your baby spend looking at a phone or tablet screen? Well, the World Health Organization has released new guidelines, which could be very concerning. We'll have all of that when we come back. Stay with us.
Go beyond the headlines every day on I-24 News. Host Ami Kaufman talks to the news makers and pundits to bring you the story behind the headlines.
Watch The Spin Room, Mondays and Thursdays, 4:05 p.m. Eastern, only on I-24 News.
Whether you're just getting out of bed or starting your day, or you're already hard at work, we cut through the clutter to give you the right dose. Breaking news and top headlines from Israel, the Middle East, and around the world. Politics, pop culture, sports, and music. We track the big stories from the heart of the Middle East. Brace yourself for your daily dose of news.
I'm Michelle McCory on I-24 News. Join me on Clear Cut, where we cut to the chase with a straightforward yet insightful breakdown of the world's top political and economic stories.
Weeknights beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on I-24 News.
This is the U.S.-Mexican border. Thousands cross this landscape every year. A journey full of uncertainty, with the hope of a new life and the fear of the unknown. The heart of a political battle plays out for those on both sides of this fence and those caught in between. Join I-24 News' Michael Shore as he takes us to the front lines of this crisis with no end in sight. Border Stories, all next week, only on I-24 News.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's go now to news out of Sri Lanka. And President Maithripala Sirisena has reportedly asked the country's police chief and defence secretary to quit following the Easter Sunday suicide bomb attacks on churches and luxury hotels in which 359 people were killed. Now, hundreds of people are still being treated in hospital, and our defence correspondent Jonathan Regev has the latest.
3 days after the terror attack that shook Sri Lanka, large blasts are still heard around the capital Colombo, this time originating in controlled explosions of suspicious objects carried out by local police. As more images of suspects are appearing and the number of victims still rising, the difficult questions are already being raised.
I'm also saddened that, there were warnings of things of this nature would happen and that we did nothing about it. And that's what saddens me the most.
Various reports indicate that Indian security forces alerted their counterparts in Sri Lanka regarding possible attacks, specifically targeting churches. The same reports state the final warning came just hours before the attack on Sunday, but nothing was done about it.
The security officials who got the intelligence report from a foreign nation did not share it with me. Appropriate actions would have been taken. I have decided to take stern action against these officials.
The president is promising a complete reshuffle at the top of the defense establishment, but that is too little, too late. These images seen again and again all over the world, and the news of tens of foreigners killed in the attack are already taking their toll on a country which desperately depends on tourism.
A lot of people are asking, they're calling us or sending us emails and saying, is it safe to come? But some are not even asking and just cancelling it. It is a decent amount of business we are losing.
The understanding that much more could have been done, the economic downturn that will follow, and the grief for the hundreds of victims will keep on haunting this Southeast Asian nation for years to come. Jonathan Regev, I-24 News.
And let's go back to Iran now with its Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif coming out to say that Iran will continue to find buyers for its oil and use a vital shipping lane to transport it. This after Washington announced all waivers on imports of sanctions-hit Iranian oil would end next week. The move pressuring importers to stop buying from Tehran, further tightening global supply. And joining me here in the studio is our senior Middle East correspondent, Mohammed Al-Qasim. Mohammed, thank you so much, you two. Tell me, What are we hearing from Iran in regards to this today?
Heightened rhetoric indeed, Sarah. 3 top Iranian officials. Here we're talking about the Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, the Iranian President, Hassan Rouhani, as well as the Iranian Foreign Minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif. They're all coming out today steadfast in their position. They're all saying that whatever the U.S. the steps that have been taken in the last few days, they are nothing but raising the tension in the Gulf and with Iran. President Hassan Rouhani, in a way, he sounded somewhat conciliatory, but he did say, as well as his Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, who was in New York today, they both said that if the U.S. and other countries try to stop and block the Iranian flow of oil from the Gulf, then they will do whatever it takes to stop other countries from having their oil exported through the Strait of Hormuz, which is a strategic strait, and that is extremely important. However, none of them elaborated on what would be next, but they did sound like they were challenging the U.S. decision.
And Mohammed, you said that there's been this increased rhetoric from Iran, but will they and can they really do anything about it?
The Iranian government have very little right now in terms of what they can do and how they can retaliate to the U.S. They can use their proxy groups and their troops scattered around the region in Lebanon and Syria and Yemen, supporting the Houthis, even in Iraq, to try to destabilize the region maybe. But that's somewhat unlikely. Maybe they can try to block and close the Strait of Hormuz. That's not going to happen, because other countries are involved, and this means war with the U.S. as well as other countries. However, despite the heightened rhetoric, we did hear conciliatory rhetoric, somewhat of statements that they want to engage with the U.S. And negotiate with the U.S. We heard it from the Iranian President Rouhani, as well as the Foreign Minister, who said, we want to negotiate with the U.S., we want to engage with them, we want to do prisoner swap, we want to engage with them aside from having this tension.
And Mohammed, in terms of regional reactions, what are we hearing there, and who's supporting who?
3 major countries in the region are extremely happy with President Donald Trump's decision. We're talking about Israel and its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We're talking about Saudi Arabia and its powerful young Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, known in the West as MBS, as well as the not as much known as Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates. All 3 put together, they're happy with these actions. In fact, today, the Deputy Defense Minister of Saudi Arabia in Moscow, Khalid bin Salman, who incidentally until recently was the Saudi ambassador to Washington, he said that it's good news and that the U.S., that the Saudi government, his own government, will try to fill the vacuum, fill the gap in the absence of the 1 million barrel per day that Iran used to export, that between Saudi Arabia as well as the United Arab Emirates, that they will fill the gap. They're happy to block the growing influence, at least in their minds, of Iran in the region.
And Mohammed, in terms of filling the gap and filling the void, I do not think anyone will do it just like you have. It's your last day today. You've been an incredible colleague and an even better friend, and I think all of our viewers can agree you will be sorely missed at the channel. And
Thank you so much.
Really
I will miss you too. Thanks,
Thank you
Sarah.
so much, Mohammed.
Pleasure.
Let's move now to US President Donald Trump's recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is indicating that a town in that area will be named in honour of the president. Now, if indeed this happens, then Trump will not be the first foreign dignitary to be honoured that way, from US President Truman to the British Lord Balfour and Ord Wingate. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Ellie Hockenberg took to the streets to hear what Israelis themselves have to say.
Trump Town, the friendship between Israel and the American president is stepping up.
All Israelis were deeply moved when President Trump made his historic decision to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And therefore, after the Passover holiday, I intend to bring to the government a resolution calling for a new community on the Golan Heights named after President Donald J. Trump.
So what do Israelis themselves think? An honorable move or one step too far?
If he's going to name it after Trump, it's a really nice move, because he's really helping the state of Israel, and he's extremely loyal. I would even say he's Jewish.
I don't think it is appropriate. Trump is doing a lot for Israel, but it's too much, too extreme. It's a very honorable decision. He must do it as a demonstration of gratitude for all the good things he's doing for us.
A very just move. There wasn't, and I might say there will not be, a friend to Israel like Trump. Until now, none of the presidents have been so close to Israel and the Jewish people. All former presidents were friendly to us, except for the previous one, but no one like Trump.
I think it's good. Recently, our relationship is stronger than ever. We have never had this before. And I think Trump deserves it for all he did.
It was only last month when U.S. President Donald Trump was quoted as saying behind closed doors that if he was to run in the Israeli elections, he would have gotten 98% of the votes. But is that so? Is the person dubbed the most Israel-friendly American president in history that popular in the Holy Land?
I think he got it wrong by 1%. He would have gotten 99% support, not 98%.
He's a very good political player, but I don't think he's right.
Out of 100, maybe 70%, people here love him. He's doing good for the country.
I don't think so. Bibi cannot be replaced. Maybe in America.
The deal of the century is set to be presented soon, and many Israelis are somewhat torn between the thought of compromises and the notion of saying no to Israel's greatest ally. Will the strong ties survive this expected hurdle?
Such a thing will never happen. The Palestinians are not serious. We shouldn't say no to him, but they keep on postponing it and are just talking and talking and smearing Israel.
There's no choice. We will embrace this plan and see what happens. I can only hope the Palestinians do want peace, really, like we want it.
I think we will embrace it wholeheartedly, and the Palestinians will reject it wholeheartedly.
You can say no, but in the right way. So he will agree to the no, because telling him no is not a good thing.
We shouldn't say no. Everything should be yes, because he helps us a lot.
We would be ungrateful if we say no. Since he got elected, he's always with Israel, supporting Israel. It would be ungrateful to say no.
Ellie Hochenberg, I-24 News.
Now, I'm not asking you to switch off the TV, but the World Health Organization has just released new guidelines about screen time for babies and toddlers, which could have many parents worried. Now, according to the WHO, babies and toddlers shouldn't be left to watch screens until they're at least 2 years old. For 4-year-olds, the organisation says the limit should be an hour a day or less. The new information released is in relation to passive viewing aimed at tackling inactivity in kids. Now, for those suffering from arachnophobia or fear of spiders, it can be devastating. Our Erica Jackson has more in an Israeli study published by Professor Menachem Ben Ezra and Dr. Yaakov Hoffman, with the findings that you can fight that phobia with a little bit of entertainment.
What's your biggest fear? For those suffering from arachnophobia or a fear of spiders, the condition can be so bad that even seeing a spider can cause a panic attack. But a new Israeli study by Ariel University and Bar Ilan University hypothesizes that some entertainment could help.
After watching Spider-Man clip and Ant-Man clip, there was a reduction in phobic symptoms.
The findings that watching as short as 7 seconds of a scene with spiders in fictional movies such as Spider-Man can lower arachnophobia symptoms by around 20%. The study, which included over 420 people from the general population, compared participants watching Spider-Man and Ant-Man to those watching real footage of the insects, and found that viewing the fictional footage works better to lower symptoms. So what makes those movies work so well?
I think that if you watch something that can be elicited as, well, disgusting if you consider ants or spiders, or a little bit fearful, and you show it in a very nice and positive context, in the context of Marvel movies, I think that the fear itself is gone, because you know that it's a movie, you know it's fun, and you know it's not real.
And watching movies such as Spider-Man can help make people who have the phobia less embarrassed due to the movie's mainstream nature.
There is a lot of stigma around mental health, and psychological treatments. Now, if you think about teenager, if he's going to go to deal with his phobia, and he said to his friends, look, I'm going to a therapy, but I'm watching Marvel movies. Well, if you're watching Marvel movies, aka you are not crazy.
Once again, Spider-Man saves the day. Erica Jackson, I-24 News.
And a new exhibition has opened in Jerusalem at the Israel Museum with the aim of revealing the similarities between the Abrahamic faiths. The exhibition displays veils worn by Muslim, Jewish and Christian women, showing just how much the religious garbs mirror one another. The exhibition curator, Noam Baram Ben Yosef, wants to inspire visitors to understand and create a connection with each other by revealing just how similar the faiths really are. And that is all we have time for this edition of I24 News. But of course, we are continuing to bring you all of the breaking stories. So do go ahead and visit us online. That's i24news.tv. I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for watching.